Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. Time right now is 3:26 Eastern, 12:26 Pacific. And in just about an hour, we are expecting a significant update in the case of Lyle and Eric Menendez, the two brothers who more than 30 years ago were convicted and sentenced to life without parole for the murders of their parents. So the very latest is this, and we did want to share it with you before we bring in criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. The latest is this: LA County District Attorney will announce his decision in just about an hour about the potential resentencing of Lyle and Eric Menendez. Each are serving 2 consecutive life prison terms without parole. Now, if the DA recommends resentencing in the wake of pressure from the brothers' relatives, attorneys, and supporters of the public, his decision will then go to a judge to decide whether Lyle and Eric Menendez will be released from prison, receive a lesser sentence, or get a new trial. Now, all of this came after prosecutors reviewed new evidence in the case of Eric and Lyle Menendez to determine whether they should be serving life sentences for killing their parents inside their Beverly Hills mansion more than 35 years ago. The brothers did admit to killing their parents, but claim it was out of self-defense after years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And to speak more on this, I do want to bring in Brian Claypool, who is a criminal defense attorney. Brian, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Sure. Great to see you again, Stephanie.
So, you and I have previously talked about this case and the fact that the prosecutors were even reviewing new evidence. Now we are going to hear in just about an hour what all of this might look like. Can you break down the possible scenarios and the significance in terms of what this could mean for Eric and Lyle Menendez?
Yeah, sure thing, Stephanie. Yeah, so the announcement by George Gascon, he's the LA County District Attorney, is going to be coming soon. And that's going to dictate whether there's going to be a hearing then in late November, I think it's November 26th, on whether there's going to be a resentencing and, like you said, possibly charges dropped or a new trial. Let's start with the new trial. There's never going to be a new trial because these guys, the Menendez brothers, admitted to killing their parents. So the sole issue really on the table is the amount of time that they should spend in jail. Should this be dropped from first-degree murder to manslaughter because of the effect of the alleged child sexual abuse on the brothers, and then that defeats the intent to kill their parents. So in a nutshell, to cut to the chase, if I'm a betting man in Vegas, I'm sure that Gascon, I'm very familiar with his procedures. I'm sure he's going to say that his office recommends a resentencing hearing at the end of November. Why do I say that? Because his office, since he's been in office the last 3.5 years, he has resentenced 300 convicted criminals in LA County. And he's made it clear to us that of those 300, only 14 have gone on to recommit another crime. So his office has a policy of wanting to resentence criminals and give them a chance at rehabilitation.
So let me ask you this, because Eric and Lyle Menendez are currently serving life in prison without parole. They've already been behind bars for 35 years or so. What does that potential resentencing look like?
Yeah, so resentencing could look like you've already spent 35 years in jail, and we are now going to release you from jail. And the argument that the Menendez legal team is going to make, and possibly even George Gascon, he's the DA, it's possible his office sends in what's called a recommendation on what he thinks the disposition could look like. And I think you're going to see that here. I think you're going to have an LA County District Attorney say, yes, let's resentence. And then when that happens, you're going to see Menendez lawyers say, hey, they've spent 35 years. That's more than enough for manslaughter. Because remember, Menendez lawyers are arguing this should be manslaughter because of the effect of the sexual abuse on a child defeats intent to kill, right? It doesn't give you a full defense. It's not an insanity defense. It lowers it from first degree to manslaughter. And I think you're also going to see Gascon's office submit a recommendation to the court for this hearing that's likely going to be in the end of November saying 35 years is enough. That's because they're going to look at the manslaughter guidelines, right? And then they're going to say, hey, that's it. That's enough. Let's release these guys. That's what I think is going to happen. It's possible that they resentence and maybe they give them the Menendez brothers another 5 years or more, but I don't think that's going to be the outcome. I think you're hearing a lot about this publicly because it's going to be, let's resentence, let's have a hearing the end of November, and then let's release the Menendez brothers.
So possibly at this hearing in November, let's say the prosecutor, or I should say the district attorney says we're going to recommend resentencing. On that day of that hearing, could Lyle and Eric Menendez potentially walk out free people?
Absolutely, absolutely. What you're going to hear later today is George Gascon's office say, do we support, right, a resentencing of the Menendez brothers? Now, if they say, if he comes out today and says, no, we don't, then there's not likely to be a hearing at the end of November to do this. And if there is a hearing at the end of November, the Menendez brothers are likely to lose because then the prosecutor is saying, we don't want to do the resentencing. But I think, I really think that Gascon's office is going to suggest resentencing. And then in addition to that, at the hearing, they're going to submit documentation on what they advise it should be. And I really think there's a good chance that the Menendez brothers walk at this hearing at the end of November, given the new information we have, with the Me Too movement. And I personally, Stephanie, have worked on quite a few child sexual abuse cases. And I will tell you that when kids are molested, they harbor a lot of that molestation. They feel humiliated. They feel shamed. And I've had some clients who've threatened to kill themselves, have tried to kill themselves. So this is not a joking matter. This is not some kind of pandering to try to get these guys off for political or personal reasons. I think there's a real, method behind this madness.
And we'll just have to wait and see. In just about an hour, we're going to be hearing from District Attorney Gascon. I want to ask you this, Brian, because you're saying, and you're in that area, you're familiar with the district attorney. You're saying that, really it's kind of what he does is that he has resentenced or at least recommended resentencing for quite a number of people. How common is this in the United States? Is it common to resentence individuals?
Yeah, great question, Stephanie. It's not common, just so your viewers know. We live in LA County where we have a very liberal district attorney, George Gascon. Remember, he started off up in San Francisco. Gavin Newsom, he may have some affiliation with George Soros. I think Soros may have donated to his campaign. Why is that important? Because the policy Gascon implemented is his theory is that criminals need to be rehabilitated, that sending them to jail is not necessarily the answer. And because of that, for example, he had removed what's called enhancements on some of these more serious crimes in LA County. For example, murdering somebody if you're affiliated with a gang. California voters said that's an enhancement that could lead to life without parole. Gascon came in LA County and said, wait a minute, I'm going to remove some of those enhancements. And if you remove that enhancement, somebody doesn't go to jail for life. So it lowers the amount of time that criminals will spend in jail. And that's not par for the course across this country. And in fact, that's really one of the issues in this presidential election. Do we want to live in a safer place or not? Are you safer now than you were 4 years ago? I will tell you this, in LA County, I personally live here with my daughters. I don't feel near as safe as I did 4 years ago, because if you don't have the repercussions for the crime, then criminals are going to go out and commit bad things and bad acts.
Brian, let me ask you this. So the DA, perhaps, as you're saying, might recommend resentencing. Is that something a judge could deny?
Yeah, the judge here is the ultimate arbiter. Another fantastic question. Yeah, you could have Gascon's office saying resentence. You could have the Menendez legal team saying resentence, and you could have a judge look at this and say, I'm not doing this. Remember the Hunter Biden plea deal? Remember with the gun charge in federal court? They had this whole plea deal worked out there. I know it's a little different, but you had a federal judge say, wait a minute, this doesn't pass the smell test, and I'm not approving this. So technically speaking, the judge doesn't just rubber stamp what lawyers for a defendant say and what the the prosecutor says. They could submit their recommendation. They could submit, and I think what they're asking for here too, Stephanie, is they want to have a hearing on this, right? I think what the judge is likely to do is not say, no, I'm not going to do a resentencing. I think the judge, I think Gascon will say, yes, let's have a hearing on resentencing. I think a judge at the end of November then is going to say, let's have a hearing on this. Let's have evidence submitted to the court from forensic psychologists on the effect of child sexual abuse. And then let's make a determination on whether they are resentenced. And one other fact I got to bring up is the evidentiary issue, right? You've got this note from one of the Menendez brothers that was written and sent to, I think an aunt got a hold of it. You've got hearsay issues with that. So I think a responsible judge would say, hey, look, we'll have a hearing on this, but we got to look at evidentiary issues. Is this note reliable? And then let's have evidence from forensic psychologists. Then let's make a determination. So I really don't think the judge is going to say yes or no based on what Gascon says and what Menendez lawyers say.
All right, Brian. And of course, we are going to be keeping a very close eye on all of the development as we are expecting the DA to be making that announcement about whether he is going to recommend resentencing or not. That is set to come down in just about an hour. And of course, we'll bring that live to our viewers right here on Live Now from Fox. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Stephanie.